What is up, y'all? It is your girl Mo. We are back with another video. This is the Rebuild Empire channel. I am so excited to be back with you all on today. We have another video dropping as of Friday, but please, oh my goodness, you want to be in this room on today when we are talking about the most dangerous room in the Bible that nobody talks about. So this is going to be some good stuff. Again, this is the Rebuild Empire. I'm so excited to be with you all. I am your girl Mo, the Rebuild Empire host. I'm your foundation layer coach, and again, you want to be in this room when we are about to discover the roots of your fruit with this video. Stay to the very end, because the last thing I want to see in the comments is for you all to answer one simple question: where is the lie? Did you spot it? So we go into literally reading 1 Kings, but it's 1 Kings 22. Okay, so when we're going into 1 Kings 22, you see where Jehoshaphat is actually going to the king of Israel at the time, and Ahab is asking him, will you go up with me to battle? And you know, Jehoshaphat, he tells the king of Israel, you know, your people is my people. You know, whatever I have, you have. You know, some of you have probably gone to some people and asked them, you know, will you go with me while I go handle, you know, this disagreement or this issue I got with somebody? And people are down. But what I love about what Jehoshaphat did was that he says, first, I would like for us to inquire of the Lord. So literally, oh my goodness, and how many people would love to have friends or associates or cousins or family that would say, before I go with you, let me inquire of the Lord first. You know, nobody really likes to inquire of the Lord before they go do things. They're going to do crazy stuff and they end up with horrible consequences. But we'll talk about that in another video. Now, I love that Jehoshaphat used his mind and he said, well, let's inquire of the Lord first. So Ahab literally calls for his prophets. So he summons 400 prophets, right? And when he summons these 400 prophets, they all come in and they're prophesying. Oh my goodness, you should see how it's probably going the way that it goes today when people are in church and people are hooping and hollering and shouting and saying what the Lord has said, right? But the crazy thing is that so many people say what the Lord has said, but this story is going to go to show you that the Lord isn't always speaking the message that you're getting. Yeah, that's it. The Lord isn't always speaking with the message that you're getting from people, from man, right? So 400 men, they come in, they're prophesying. All of them are saying, you know, they want to inquire, should we go up to battle to Samaria? You know, should we fight them? And the land was actually Ramoth Gilead. It was Ramoth Gilead where they were trying to go, and they were trying to inquire to see if they should go to battle. And all 400 prophets, they say, yeah, you know, go, you'll get great victory. Go ahead, go up there, you know, take on that battle, and I'm telling you, you're gonna walk away with victory, right? Oh man. And Jehoshaphat must have felt that what they were prophesying was not at 110%. And that's what I love about discernment. Because although somebody may prophesy to you, I love when God gives us that conviction to let us know when things aren't right, when people say what he said and you know that his presence isn't in that room. So Jehoshaphat, he says, is there anybody else that we can inquire about? You know, anybody else, you know, besides these 400 that we can inquire of? And literally the king of Israel, who is Ahab, he says, oh man, he says, there's another, but this one here, I hate him. You know, every time he come, he don't got nothing good to say. Nothing good to say pertaining to nothing regarding me, right? So he's like, you know, go get him. I want to see, I want to inquire. You know, Jehoshaphat is still antsy. He want to figure out this inquiry, we got to make sure that this is right before we just go up there all kind of ways. You understand? And I love people like this who want to check the scene. Who all gonna be there? They got guns. That you need those kind of friends that want to scope out the scene before everybody just get out and think that everything is okay. So what I love is that when Micah gets summoned, and the servant who Ahab sent to go and summon Micah literally says, all of the other prophets have stated good things concerning the king, and tells him that he should do the same thing and speak favorably regarding the king, right? And Micah says, whatever the Lord speaks to me is what I will speak. You got to be 10. How many of y'all know that you got to be 10 toes down with the Lord if you are going to say that the Lord has spoken to you? It better be a word from God for real if you are going to give somebody a word and tell them that the Lord has spoken to you, because you will be held accountable. And I love that about Micah, because he stood 10 toes down with, if the Lord did not speak through me, it will be challenged. It will be proven that it was never him, if it wasn't him. So he goes into the room with Jehoshaphat and Ahab. And Ahab inquires, and he says, well, should we go up to Ramoth Gilead and go to battle? And Michael said, yeah, go ahead, go to battle. You will surely, be victorious. And Ahab gets so upset, and he says, how many times do I have to ask you to swear by the Lord that you are speaking the truth? Because at first, Micah told him what he wanted to hear. The servant told him, speak favorably. I'm in front of a king. And Ahab literally wants the truth from him. But remember, just earlier, he said that he hated getting commentary from him or revelation from this man, because it was never good concerning him. So Micah begins to start telling the truth. And he says, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, and I saw all the host of heaven sitting from the left all the way to the right. And at this point, he's giving you a visual of how heaven is conversing about this situation before it happened. And I thought that was amazing to me, because think about how many conversations that heaven is having about you or about circumstances before you ever enter into those situations. It was absolutely phenomenal to me. So he goes and he says, the spirits are conversing, but the Lord asks, he says, who is going to go and entice Ahab regarding going into battle? And these hosts of heaven are literally conversing with each other, and then one says, well, I'll go, and the Lord asks him, well, what are you going to do to entice him to go to battle? And he says, I'll put a lying spirit on all 400 prophets that he got. And the Lord, being in agreement, said, okay, well, that works. Go work out. Because you got to be mindful now. A lot of kings and 1 Kings and 2 Kings, you'll read about a lot of corrupt kings who did not want to follow suit of how God wanted things done. They wanted to do things in the way in which they saw fit, right? So God said, okay, well, I'll allow it. I'll give you the will to do that, So this host of heaven, he goes and he does this. So this is where you see that conversation of the 400 prophets prophesying, but them not understanding that they have a lying spirit in the room with them as they are prophesying. So that just goes to show you also that prophets lie. Okay, so this is where we get to see where Micah reveals the revelation that God has allowed for him to see, when literally the host of heaven and the Lord are having a conversation pertaining to the enticement of Ahab. Literally, God decreeing and declaring for one of the hosts of heaven to go and do it, to place a lying spirit on the tongues of all 400 prophets, literally to declare disaster for Ahab. So when you think about prophets and you think about them saying, and the Lord says, sometimes you have to test that spirit to see if it really says that. But I was so glad to see that Jehoshaphat didn't go for anything, used his spiritual discernment and literally inquired of the Lord and actually took heed of Micah's words. Now, when he tells this revelation, sadly, you had one of the prophets come and say, and his name was Zedekiah, he says, when did the Lord leave me? And he smacks Micah, and Micah doesn't strike him back. He just says, you will see on the day that you hide in the inner room. So he tells him that it will come to pass when he will see, and he places him in a specific place. So when he gets to that specific place, he will see that he has not prophesied the things that the Lord has stated at all. So you get to that place of seeing where Micah triumphs over someone hitting him and trying to challenge his words. And then you see the king, who is Ahab, the king of Israel, tells Micah that he is going to be in prison with barely any food or bread to eat, any food or water to eat, up until he comes back. So literally Micah says, if you come back in peace, then the Lord has not spoke to me. And that's the kind of thing you want to see, is when people challenge people's belief, because what you will learn is that the biggest thing that was hidden was because you see a room full of 400 people, and the one person that speaks truth, it's the person that everybody despises, right? It's the person that nobody wants to take heed to his wording. But God's words are never comfortable. God is not in the business of making people comfortable with what he has to say. That's why even when it comes down to his word and us doing healthy correction with one another, it won't always be comfortable conversations, but they're conversations for us to be in comfort later, if that makes sense for people. And what I want you to know is, if you read chapter 22 in its entirety, you see where, although Ahab tried to be in disguise going into battle, it was already decreed and declared by God for his disaster to be upon him. And he died in his chariot by a arrow that was darted at him and hit him and caused a fatal wound, and he later died. And again, as God had said, everybody was going to go to their country with their specific people, and that was so. So Micah ended up not being the liar, and all 400 prophets being declared liars, but through a lying spirit that was sent by God, because the disaster on Ahab's life was already declared, because it was in God's will. So when I asked you, where was the lie? There was no lie in Micah's words. There was simply truth. But because it was a hard truth to swallow, I think the biggest thing that we have to understand is that Ahab had already made his mind up that he wanted everybody to just come in agreement with what felt better for him, what made him feel like he can go out here and conquer the world. He didn't want something that would place a fear in him or that would make him shrink in his position. But God is never going to be in the comfort business. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. God is not a God who wants to give comfort to people in the midst of correction, right? He is your peace, and he will give you rest and so forth. But God is not in the business of making people comfortable when they have been in sin and when he has not spoken for somebody to do something. But the thing is, God is not going to continue to keep watching over our corruption and us thinking that we are going to continuously get pats on the wrist and a pat on the wrist and a pat on the wrist. The same thing is what happened to Pharaoh. Moses continued to pray for his deliverance, and he continued to harden his heart towards the people. And God did justly as he said he would. If you do not let my people go, then surely, since you do not want to let my firstborn go, I will take all of your firstborn sons. And he did as such. God is not a God who is in the business of comfort when it comes down to his will being executed. So I want you all to take it with you. Do not be uncomfortable in the midst of truth. Make sure that you take heed to truth, and just make sure that whenever someone prophesies to you, that you test that spirit, you pray about it, you go to God with it, and you let him reveal what is the truth and what is a lie. Do not try to fit into what is comfortable when it is said. It is okay to be uncomfortable in truth, because it will save you in the end. And if Ahab would have listened, it would have saved him in the end. I hope this video has been of a lesson to you all, and I'm so excited to give the next lesson. And I just love doing this. I love being consistent, and I love showing up for you all. And I pray that this message finds whoever needs it, because this is definitely a mind blower when you think about heaven having conversations about you before anything ever happens. So be careful the things and the vows that you make to God, and be careful of being offended by truth. I love you all. I am your Coach Mo. I am Monique, your foundation layer coach. This is the Rebuild Empire channel. I want you to hype this video up and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Love y'all.
Just move out grace do. Even when I hate loud, his voice cut through. They say God won't help him. Man, that's